Monday, April 28th, 2025, 12:33 p.m. Madrid, Spain. On a mild spring afternoon, with the sun high and 50 million people going about their day, the lights went out. Not just in one city, across an entire country. Spain's grid collapsed in less than 90 seconds. 15 gigawatts of generation lost in 5 seconds. Train lines stopped mid-route. Surgeons finished operations by phone flashlight. ATMs went dark across Portugal. The cascading failure spread so fast that automated systems couldn't respond before it was already over. But here's the thing most people never think about. Systems like this are supposed to be caught. There are layers of backup defenses, built specifically to stop exactly this from happening. So what went wrong? And what, on a normal day, is actually standing between you and total darkness? To understand what a backup grid actually does, you first have to understand what the grid is trying to do every second of every day. Electricity travels as alternating current, oscillating at a precise frequency. In North America, that's 60 cycles per second. In Europe, 50. And the entire grid, every generator connected to it, every home drawing from it, has to operate in lockstep with that frequency within a razor-thin tolerance band. Acceptable deviation is roughly half a hertz in either direction. When supply exactly matches demand, the frequency holds steady. When a large generator suddenly drops offline, or when demand spikes faster than generators can ramp up, the frequency begins to drift. And when it drifts far enough, automatic protection systems across the grid start tripping. One generator disconnects to protect itself. That causes frequency to drop further. Another generator trips, then another. What engineers call a cascading failure, what the rest of us call a blackout. The question grid operators lose sleep over isn't whether individual components will fail. They will. The question is whether, when that happens, the grid can absorb the shock and recover before the cascade begins. That's where backup systems come in. And there isn't just one. There are layers of them, each designed to kick in faster than the last could handle alone. The first layer isn't backup power in the sense most people imagine. It's power that's already spinning, already connected to the grid, but deliberately held back from full output. These are called spinning reserves. Gas plants running at partial load, hydroelectric dams with water ready to release. They exist in a state of constant readiness, able to ramp their output within seconds the moment frequency starts to drop. In the United States, grid operators like PJM, which covers 65 million people across 13 states and the District of Columbia, require member generators to hold specific amounts of this reserve capacity at all times. The rule is that the grid must be able to absorb the sudden loss of the single largest generator online without frequency leaving its safe band. But spinning reserves take time, even seconds count, so behind them sits something faster. Buried inside every major substation are automatic relays that monitor grid frequency continuously. If frequency drops below a set threshold, typically around 59.3 Hz in North America, these relays begin disconnecting sections of the grid from demand, deliberately cutting power to neighborhoods or districts so that the remaining generation doesn't have to support the full load. It sounds drastic, and it is. But a controlled rolling blackout affecting part of a city for an hour is orders of magnitude better than the alternative. The entire grid going down with no power anywhere for days. This is a deliberate sacrifice play, written into the grid's own defense code. In the last decade, a third layer has started to become significant: utility-scale battery storage. Unlike gas plants, which need seconds to ramp, large battery installations can inject power into the grid within milliseconds. During a heat wave in California in 2024, operators called on over 16,000 household batteries enrolled in a virtual power plant program to supplement grid supply and avoid rolling blackouts. Collectively, those batteries provided a meaningful buffer at exactly the moment the grid was most stressed. And then, at the bottom of the stack, is the layer no one ever wants to use: black start generators. Power plants that can start without any electricity from the grid at all. They carry their own startup power supply. When a grid completely collapses and goes dark, these are the machines that reignite it, one island at a time, until enough generation is online to begin reconnecting the rest, typically hydro facilities and certain gas turbines. Positioned specifically for this role, required by regulation to maintain the capability, and tested regularly so operators know exactly where to reach when everything else has already failed. But all of this only works if the cascade can be interrupted in time. Which brings us back to Spain. Spain sits at the edge of Europe's interconnected grid, connected to France by a handful of transmission lines, with an interconnection capacity representing just 3.4% of its domestic demand, far below the 10% minimum the European Union recommends. In practical terms, it means Spain can't lean heavily on neighboring countries to stabilize its grid when something goes wrong. On April 28th, at 12:30 p.m. local time, Spain's generation mix was 53% solar, almost entirely fed through inverters rather than spinning turbines. Inverters are efficient, but they don't have rotational mass. They don't carry what engineers call inertia. Inertia is the reason a grid doesn't collapse. The instant supply and demand fall out of balance. Spinning machines store kinetic energy in their rotors, energy that takes time to dissipate, giving operators a few seconds to respond before frequency drops dangerously. The more of your grid that runs on inverter-based renewables, the less of that buffer you have. At 12:33:19 p.m., a large generator in southwest Spain tripped. Within 1.5 to 5 seconds, a second large generator tripped. Renewable plants across the country began disconnecting automatically, their protection systems reacting to voltage anomalies they were programmed to avoid. The frequency fell faster than the spinning reserves could catch it. Load shedding activated, but it raised system voltage while trying to reduce demand, making the voltage problem worse rather than better. The transmission ties to France disconnected automatically to prevent the collapse from spreading into the rest of Europe. That protection worked. The rest of Europe stayed on, but Spain and Portugal went dark. Full restoration took 15 hours in Spain, 12 hours in Portugal. Restoration relied on the black start layer, 2 facilities in Portugal, and a sequence of carefully coordinated reconnections across Spain. Operators rebuilt the grid one island of power at a time, checking stability before adding the next section. It took the better part of a day. The layers of defense had been real, but they'd been designed for a different kind of grid than the one that now existed. The Spain blackout was investigated by a 49-member expert panel drawn from regulators and grid operators across the continent. Their final report, published in 2026, ran 472 pages. One of its central findings was direct. The grid's existing defense architecture was not equipped to interrupt the specific kind of failure that occurred. The fix isn't to stop building renewable energy. It's to fundamentally redesign how grids defend themselves. That means grid-forming inverters that can mimic the inertial behavior of spinning machines. It means deploying far more battery storage, fast response capacity positioned throughout the network, rather than concentrated in a few places. And it means stronger interconnections between national grids, so no single country becomes an energy island when it's most vulnerable. The backup systems exist. Engineers have spent decades designing them. But grids are changing faster than the defenses built to protect them, and the gap between those two things is where blackouts live. Most of us will never see the inside of a grid control room. We won't notice the moment a spinning reserve ramps to cover a tripped generator. We won't see the relays that made a controlled sacrifice of our block, so the hospital across town stayed lit. But those systems are running right now, in real time, every time you flip a switch and the light comes on.